The crystal shattered in slow motion. Red wine exploded across Isabella's dress, spreading like a gunshot wound across the pale silk. The laughter came next, sharp and vicious, echoing off the marble columns of the gallery's main hall. Marcus's associates howled like hyenas, their expensive suits and designer watches glinting under the chandeliers as they reveled in her humiliation. Isabella stood frozen. Not from the cold liquid soaking through to her skin, but from the weight of 3 months of this. 3 months of being small, invisible, controlled. Her hands trembled at her sides, red wine dripping from her fingertips like evidence. Then the room went silent. The kind of silence that precedes violence. Dominic Cross moved through the crowd, and people parted like he was Moses at the Red Sea. His tailored Tom Ford suit was immaculate, his expression carved from granite. 6'3" of controlled lethality, with slicked-back dark hair and eyes that promised retribution. The man whose name made politicians nervous and rival crime families reconsider their life choices. He stopped inches from Isabella. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle, mixed with something darker. Danger, maybe. Or promise. Without breaking eye contact with Marcus, Dominic reached out. His hand moved with deliberate slowness, fingers tilting her chin up with a touch that managed to be both gentle and absolutely commanding. His thumb brushed a drop of wine from her jaw, the gesture intimate, possessive, territorial. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Almost soft. But it carried the weight of an executioner reading a death sentence. Who do you belong to? Marcus opened his mouth. Whatever he was about to say died unspoken. From this moment, Dominic continued, his voice now filling the vast space like a judge pronouncing verdict, she's under my protection. His eyes swept the room, landing on each of Marcus's associates one by one. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Anyone who looks at her wrong answers to me. Anyone who even thinks about her in a way I don't like. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Isabella had ever seen. Well. You're smart men. You understand consequences. The threat was crystal clear. The power shift, absolute. Marcus's face drained of color. Around them, champagne glasses were lowered. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone in that room understood exactly what had just happened. Isabella Romano was no longer prey. She was claimed. Welcome back, my loves. Before we continue, please tap the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and share this story with someone who needs it. Also, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. It helps the algorithm know you want more content like this. Alright, let's dive in. The leather notebook felt cold against Isabella's palm, its weight disproportionate to its size. She traced the embossed initials on the cover, A.R., Antonio Romano, her father, and felt the familiar ache settle in her chest like a stone. 3 months. 93 days since the phone call that shattered her world. Since the police knocked on her door at 2 in the morning with their practiced sympathy and careful explanations about brake failures and tragic accidents on rain-slick roads. Isabella sat in the gallery's storage room, surrounded by shrouded paintings and crated sculptures that looked like ghosts waiting for resurrection. Her father had spent 30 years building this collection, each piece chosen with meticulous care, each one representing some truth he wanted to preserve. A Rothko that captured grief in crimson and black. A Pollock that made chaos beautiful. A small Caravaggio sketch of Saint Sebastian, pierced with arrows but defiant. Marcus was planning to sell them all. She opened the notebook, flipping through pages covered in her father's neat handwriting. Exhibition notes, acquisition strategies, and scattered throughout like breadcrumbs, observations that meant nothing until you looked closer. MV inquired about the Caravaggio again. 3rd time this month. Gallery account shows withdrawal of $50,000. MV claims restoration work. Checked with contractors. No work ordered. MV Marcus Vitali. Her stepbrother. The storage room door crashed open without warning. Still hiding in here with the discarded art? Marcus's voice sliced through the silence. How appropriate. Isabella stood quickly, angling her body to shield the notebook from view. Marcus filled the doorway in a charcoal Brioni suit, all sharp angles and calculated charm. At 31, he was handsome in the way a blade was handsome, effective and dangerous. I was reviewing inventory, she said quietly. Some of these pieces need climate control adjustments before nothing. Marcus stepped inside, and Isabella fought the urge to retreat. I've made arrangements for the Rothko and the Pollock. Buyers coming Friday. Cash sale. The words hit like a physical blow. Those were father's favorites. They're not for sale. Everything's for sale, little sister. That's how the real world works. He examined a covered sculpture with theatrical disinterest. Something you'd understand if you spent less time playing art curator and more time accepting reality. The gallery is father's legacy. The gallery is my legacy now. Marcus turned to face her fully, his smile sharp as broken glass. Or have you forgotten the terms of the will? I'm your legal guardian until you turn 25 or marry someone I approve. 3 more years, Isabella. Unless you'd like to accelerate the timeline. Her stomach clenched. She knew what was coming. Vincent Caruso's charity gala is Saturday night, Marcus continued, his tone shifting to false pleasantry. You'll attend. You'll be charming. You'll wear something that doesn't make you look like you're in mourning. He paused. Actually, you are in mourning. But 3 months is quite enough grieving, don't you think? Vincent Caruso. Real estate developer with political connections and, according to whispered rumors, debts to very dangerous people. I'm not interested in Vincent Caruso. Your interests are irrelevant. Marcus moved closer, and she caught the cloying scent of his cologne. Vincent is interested in you. More specifically, he's interested in the Romano name, the connections, access to this collection. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Beneficial for you. For both of us. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. The notebook tumbled from her hands, hitting the concrete floor with a sharp crack. Marry Vincent and this unpleasantness ends. You'll have security, status, a husband. I'll have a reliable business partner. Everyone wins. Except me. Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than a shout. You think you have choices here? You're a liability, Isabella. An obstacle. The only question is whether you become useful or whether accidents happen. He released her wrist. Saturday night. Black tie. Smile pretty. Show Vincent why the Romano name is worth the investment. He paused at the doorway, glancing back. And stop reading father's old notes. The past is dead. Just like him. The door closed with devastating finality. Isabella sank to the floor, retrieved the notebook with shaking hands, and checked for damage. Her wrist throbbed where Marcus had grabbed her, and she knew bruises would bloom there by morning. 3 more years until she turned 25. Or marry Vincent Caruso and trade one cage for another. She opened the notebook to her father's final entry, written 2 days before his death. Met with James Blackwell. MV has been siphoning funds for at least 2 years. Meeting with Dominic Cross tomorrow. He owes me a favor. Time to collect. Dominic Cross. The name everyone in the city knew and no one spoke above a whisper. Her father had been meeting with him the day before he died. Isabella pressed the notebook to her chest and made a decision. Saturday night at the Caruso Gala, she wouldn't just play her part. She'd find a way to survive. And somehow, she'd make Marcus pay for everything he'd taken. Dominic Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, 30 stories above the city that both feared and needed him. Below, the streets pulsed with life, millions of people moving through their days unaware of the invisible architecture that governed their world. The networks of power and money, favors and debts, loyalty and betrayal that kept civilization from collapsing into chaos. His civilization. His rules. The Caruso event is confirmed for Saturday, Luca said from behind him, reviewing the tablet in his hands. Dominic's second-in-command and oldest friend had been with him since they were teenagers running protection rackets in South Brooklyn. 20 years of trust, earned in blood. Guest list is the usual suspects. Politicians, developers, society types trying to launder their reputations through charity. Dominic didn't turn from the window. Vincent's nervous. His debts are coming due. The Russians don't negotiate payment plans. No, they don't. Dominic watched a delivery truck navigate the street below, thinking about the delicate balance required to maintain an empire. Force alone wasn't enough. You needed leverage, information, the ability to anticipate every player's next move 3 steps before they made it. Chess played with human lives and million-dollar stakes. Antonio Romano had understood that. Had taught Dominic that lesson 15 years ago when a younger, more volatile version of himself had been ready to go to war over a territorial dispute. Violence is expensive, Antonio had said over espresso in his gallery, surrounded by paintings worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. It draws attention, creates vacuums, destabilizes markets. Smart men find other solutions. Dominic had listened because Antonio Romano wasn't just some civilian offering naive advice. He was a man who navigated the intersection of legitimate business and underground economy with the grace of a ballet dancer. His art gallery was impeccable, his reputation beyond reproach, but he knew how the real world worked. He understood that power came in many forms. The favor Antonio had called in had been simple. Help protect a shipment of recovered art pieces from being seized by a corrupt customs official. Dominic had made 2 phone calls, applied the right pressure, and the problem disappeared. Antonio never forgot it. Now Antonio was dead, and Dominic owed a debt to a ghost. Marcus Vitali is accelerating his timeline, Luca continued. He's been shopping the Romano collection around. The Rothko, the Pollock, even the Caravaggio sketch. Word is he's desperate for liquid capital. To pay off what he embezzled before someone discovers it, Dominic said quietly. And his sister? Isabella Romano. Luca's tone shifted, careful. She's barely been seen in public since the funeral. Marcus keeps her on a tight leash. Controls her finances, her movements. There's talk he's trying to marry her off to Vincent Caruso. Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd seen Isabella Romano exactly twice. Once at a gallery opening 2 years ago, where she'd given a presentation on Renaissance techniques that had been both scholarly and passionate. She'd reminded him of her father, that same ability to find meaning in beauty, to believe art could elevate humanity. The second time had been at Antonio's funeral. Rain had poured down like judgment while they lowered the casket into the ground. Isabella had stood apart from Marcus and his mother, a solitary figure in black, her face a mask of controlled devastation. She hadn't cried, hadn't broken, had simply stared at the grave as if memorizing every detail. Dominic had wanted to approach her, to offer condolences, to honor his friend's memory. But what could he say? Your father was a good man who helped me once, and now he's dead under suspicious circumstances I'm looking into? I want eyes on Marcus Vitali, Dominic said. Financial records, communications, movements. Everything. Already in progress. Luca paused. Isabella will be at the gala Saturday. Marcus is forcing her to attend, probably to parade her in front of Vincent like merchandise. Dominic turned from the window finally, his expression carved from granite. At 37, he'd built an empire through intelligence, discipline, and the willingness to do what others couldn't. He wore power like his tailored suits, natural and absolute. But beneath the reputation, the fear his name inspired, the violence he was capable of, there existed a code. Debts were honored. Loyalty was rewarded. And men like Antonio Romano, rare men who treated him with respect rather than terror, were remembered. Send word to Vincent, Dominic said quietly. I'll be attending his gala. Luca's eyebrows rose fractionally. Dominic rarely attended such events personally. His presence turned social gatherings into auditions, everyone performing for his approval or forgiveness. Anything else? Yes. Dominic returned to his desk, his mind already calculating angles and outcomes. Find out everything about Isabella Romano's situation. Legal status, financial access, what leverage Marcus is using. Antonio asked me for help the day before he died. I wasn't available. The regret in those words was subtle but present, a rare emotion from a man who'd trained himself not to feel. I won't make that mistake twice, Dominic continued. If Antonio's daughter needs protection, she'll have it. Whether she knows to ask for it or not. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm, unaware that Saturday night, 2 trajectories were about to collide. A woman desperate for freedom and a man who traded in power were about to discover that some debts could only be paid in revolution. The Caruso Foundation Gala occupied the entire top floor of the Metropolitan Arts Center, a monument to wealth masquerading as philanthropy. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner while servers in crisp white jackets circulated with champagne and canapés that cost more than most people's monthly rent. 300 of the city's elite had gathered to write tax-deductible checks and congratulate themselves on their generosity. Isabella stood near the bar, her black Valentino dress clinging to her frame like a second skin. Marcus had chosen it, of course, low enough to be enticing, elegant enough to be respectable. She felt like a mannequin in a store window, displayed for purchase. Vincent Caruso had been circling her all evening like a shark scenting blood. He was 52, silver-haired and handsome in the way wealthy men could afford to be, with a smile that never quite reached his calculating eyes. He'd touched her arm twice, her lower back once, each contact lingering a second too long. "Your father would be proud of how you've maintained the gallery," Vincent had said earlier, standing too close. "Though I imagine it's quite a burden for someone so young. A woman needs support in these matters." Support. The word made her skin crawl. Marcus appeared at her elbow now with two of his associates, Jason Keller and David Moss, both cut from the same entitled cloth. They reeked of old money and newer cocaine habits. "Isabella, darling," Marcus said, his smile sharp. "You look tense. Have another drink." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're being rude." His hand clamped on her elbow, fingers digging in. "Vincent's waiting for you on the terrace. Go be charming." Jason laughed, the sound cruel and juvenile. "Maybe she needs liquid courage. What do you think, Marcus? Should we help loosen her up?" Isabella tried to pull away, but Marcus's grip tightened. "Gentlemen, my sister isn't much of a drinker." Gets emotional. "Then let's fix that." David reached for a glass of red wine from a passing server's tray. Everything happened in slow motion. David's hand extending. The crystal glass tilting. Red wine arcing through the air like arterial spray. The cold shock of liquid hitting her chest, soaking through the silk, spreading across the bodice in an obscene bloom. The laughter erupted immediately. Jason doubled over, wheezing with mirth. David grinned like he'd just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. Marcus wore an expression of mock concern that didn't hide the satisfaction in his eyes. "Oh, Isabella," Marcus said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn and stare. "How clumsy. You should really be more careful." The wine dripped from her dress, pooling on the marble floor. Red drops fell like evidence, like blood, like everything she'd been holding inside for 3 months finally made visible. Isabella stood frozen, trembling not from cold but from the accumulated weight of every humiliation, every threat, every moment Marcus had made her feel small and powerless and owned. The room began to quiet, conversations dying as people turned to witness her degradation. She could feel their eyes, their judgment, their pity. Poor Isabella Romano. Can't even hold herself together at a charity gala. Then the silence became absolute. Dominic Cross moved through the crowd, and people parted like he was Moses at the Red Sea. Isabella had never seen him up close before, only glimpsed him at her father's funeral standing apart in the rain. Now he approached with the focused intensity of a predator who just selected his prey, and she realized with sudden clarity that the prey wasn't her. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle beneath something darker. His suit was immaculate Tom Ford, his dark hair swept back, his expression carved from ice and fury. When his eyes met hers, she saw recognition there, and something else. Decision. Without breaking eye contact with Marcus, Dominic reached out. His hand moved with deliberate slowness, fingers tilting her chin up with a touch that managed to be both gentle and absolutely commanding. His thumb brushed a drop of wine from her jaw, the gesture intimate, possessive, territorial. "Who do you belong to?" His voice was quiet, almost soft, but it carried the weight of an executioner reading sentence. Marcus's face drained of color. Around them, the gala had become a tableau, everyone frozen in place, waiting. From this moment, Dominic continued, his voice now filling the vast space like a judge pronouncing verdict, "She's under my protection." His gaze swept the room, landing on Jason, on David, on Vincent Caruso standing slack-jawed by the terrace doors. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Anyone who looks at her wrong answers to me. Anyone who even thinks about her in a way I don't like. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Isabella had ever seen. Well. You're smart men. You understand consequences. Marcus found his voice finally, though it came out strangled. You can't just. I just did. Dominic's hand dropped from Isabella's chin, but his presence remained a shield around her. Take your friends and leave. Now. Before I decide your continued breathing is optional. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jason and David backed away immediately. Marcus stood rigid, his face a mask of impotent rage, before turning on his heel and stalking toward the exit. Isabella stood in her wine-stained dress, surrounded by 300 witnesses, and realized everything had just changed. She just wasn't sure if she'd been saved or claimed. Dominic's penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor of the Apex Tower, a fortress of steel and glass that seemed to float above the city like a monument to absolute power. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the living space, offering a 360-degree view of the urban sprawl below. At night, the city lights looked like stars inverted, a constellation of human ambition and desperation spread out for his consideration. Isabella stood in the center of the main room, still wearing the wine-stained Valentino, feeling desperately out of place. She'd been here for 20 minutes, escorted by Luca after Dominic had orchestrated her exit from the gala with the efficiency of a military extraction. No one had dared stop them. No one had even spoken as they'd walked through the crowd. You should change. A woman's voice came from the doorway. Isabella turned to find an elegant figure in her early 30s, dark hair swept into a chignon, wearing casual designer clothes that somehow looked more expensive than formal wear. I'm Sophia. Dominic's sister. I brought you some things. She held out a shopping bag from a boutique Isabella recognized but could never afford. I don't understand what's happening, Isabella said quietly. You're under my brother's protection now. That means you're safe. It also means Marcus Vitali just made the list of people whose life expectancy has significantly shortened. Sophia's smile was sharp. The bathroom's down the hall. Second door on the left. Take your time. 20 minutes later, Isabella emerged in black cashmere pants and a silk blouse that fit perfectly, her wine-stained dress folded in the bag like evidence. She found Dominic in his study, a room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of ebony. He stood at another wall of windows, hands in his pockets, studying the city below. He'd removed his jacket and tie, rolled up his shirt sleeves. Somehow that made him more intimidating, not less. Like seeing the working parts of a dangerous machine. Your father came to see me the day before he died, Dominic said without turning. Did you know that? Isabella's breath caught. No. He thought someone was embezzling from the gallery. He had evidence, documentation. He asked for my help navigating it quietly, without destroying the family name. Dominic turned finally, his expression unreadable. I told him I'd look into it. I had business in Boston, meetings I couldn't cancel. I said I'd call him when I got back. You think Marcus killed him? I think your father's car going off the road the night before we were supposed to meet is a coincidence I don't believe in. Dominic moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a file. My people have been investigating. Marcus embezzled over $2 million in the past 3 years. He's been selling pieces from the collection and pocketing the money, falsifying records, bribing the accountant. Isabella felt the room tilt. $2 million. Enough to kill 4. Enough to destroy everything her father had built. Why are you telling me this? Because I owed your father a debt I can never repay. Dominic's voice was quiet but absolute. And because you deserve to know the truth about the man controlling your life. Isabella sank into the leather chair facing his desk, her legs suddenly unable to support her. What do I do with this information? Marcus is my legal guardian. I have no money, no access, no power. Even if I go to the police, he'll find a way to discredit me, to make me disappear. You're right. Which is why you're staying here until we figure out a better solution. I can't just move in with you. Isabella's voice rose despite her attempt at control. Do you understand what that will do to my reputation? What people will say? I understand that reputation means nothing when you're dead. Dominic leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Marcus made his play tonight. He humiliated you publicly, displayed you for sale to Vincent Caruso like merchandise. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous. I won't allow him another opportunity. You won't allow? Isabella stood, anger finally breaking through her shock. You don't get to decide what I do. I'm not your property, Mr. Cross, and I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing by the big bad Mafia boss. Something flickered in Dominic's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. You're right, he said after a moment. You're not my property. But you are under my protection, whether you accept it or not. That's the debt I owe your father. That's the promise I'm making to his memory. Isabella stared at him, this man whose reputation promised only violence, whose word could end lives with a phone call. But she saw something else there too. Genuine remorse. Honor of a kind she hadn't expected. He talked about you, she said quietly. My father. He said you were one of the few honest men he knew. I didn't understand what he meant. How could a criminal be honest? Because I don't pretend to be anything other than what I am. Dominic's voice was steady. Your stepbrother wears respectability like a mask while stealing from the dead. I operate in shadows, but I honor my debts. Your father understood the difference. Isabella looked around the study, her eyes landing on a small painting on the wall behind his desk. She recognized it immediately. A Monet, one of his lesser-known pieces, a study of water lilies from his time at Giverny. That's real, she said, surprise clear in her voice. Your father helped me acquire it 3 years ago. Said every man needs beauty in his life, even men like me. Dominic followed her gaze. Especially men like me. Isabella felt something shift between them. Not trust, not yet. But the beginning of understanding. They were both trying to honor the same ghost, navigate the same loss, survive the same dangerous world from different angles. I'll stay, she said finally. But on one condition. You help me destroy Marcus. Not just protect me from him. Help me take back everything he stole. Dominic smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. That, Miss Romano, was always the plan. The rumor started within 48 hours. Isabella heard them third-hand through Sophia, who'd been monitoring the city's social media ecosystem with the precision of a surveillance expert. Marcus was playing dirty, which surprised exactly no one. Listen to this one, Sophia said, scrolling through her tablet over morning coffee in the penthouse's kitchen. Anonymous source claims you've been struggling with your mental health since your father's death. Another says you've developed a dependency on prescription medications. And my personal favorite, you've been having an inappropriate relationship with Dominic for months, which is why you ran to him at the gala. Isabella's coffee turned bitter in her mouth. He's trying to have me declared incompetent. If he can convince people I'm unstable, he can petition for permanent guardianship or have me committed. He can try. Sophia set down the tablet, her expression sharp. But he's playing a game he doesn't understand. My brother doesn't lose, Isabella. And now that you're under his protection, neither do you. That afternoon, Luca arrived at the penthouse with a forensic accountant named Maria Chen, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the focused intensity of someone who saw numbers the way poets saw metaphors. She spread Marcus's financial records across Dominic's dining table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. Your stepbrother is sloppy, Maria said, tapping a spreadsheet with her pen. He's been siphoning funds through a series of shell corporations, but the pattern is obvious once you know what to look for. Gallery acquisitions that never happened. Restoration work on pieces that don't exist. Insurance claims on artwork that was never damaged. How much total? Isabella asked, though part of her didn't want to know. 3.2 million over 4 years. Maria pulled up another document. He's also taken out loans using the gallery as collateral without proper authorization. If the estate were audited properly, he'd be facing criminal charges immediately. Isabella felt rage crystallize in her chest, cold and sharp. $3.2 million. Her father's legacy, stolen piece by piece while she'd been too grief-stricken and powerless to see it happening. "We need this to be airtight," Luca said, his tone pragmatic. "Marcus will have lawyers, and he'll claim Isabella was aware of all transactions, that she approved everything. We need evidence that can't be disputed. Then we get it." Isabella stood, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I still have keys to the gallery. Marcus doesn't know I made copies before he tried to take them. The original contracts are in my father's safe. The real acquisition records, the insurance documents, everything that proves what Marcus has been doing." Sophia's eyes lit up. "When does Marcus leave for his meeting in Philadelphia?" "Thursday morning. He'll be gone for 2 days." Isabella had overheard him on the phone before the gala, arranging meetings with potential buyers for the Rothko. "But the gallery has security cameras now. He installed them everywhere." "Security cameras I can handle," Luca said with a slight smile. "Give me the gallery's address and alarm codes. I'll have the system looped before you walk in the door." While Luca and Maria planned the operation, Sophia worked her own angle, using the social connections she'd cultivated over years of being Dominic Cross's sister. She was a bridge between two worlds, legitimate society and the underground economy, and she navigated both with the skill of a diplomat. "I had lunch with Rebecca Hartwell today," Sophia reported that evening. "She's on the board of 3 major cultural institutions and chairs the Metropolitan Arts Foundation. I let slip that Marcus has been making questionable sales from the Romano collection, pieces that Antonio specifically designated as never to be sold." "What did she say?" "She was horrified. Apparently, your father had promised several pieces as eventual donations to the Met. If Marcus is selling them privately, it's not just unethical, it's potentially actionable." Sophia smiled. "Rebecca is very influential, and she's very upset. By tomorrow, half the art world will be asking questions about Marcus Vitali's management of the gallery." The chess pieces were moving. Luca handled the physical evidence. Maria documented the financial crimes. Sophia managed the social pressure. And through it all, Dominic orchestrated everything with the precision of a conductor leading a symphony of destruction. Isabella found him in his study late that night, reviewing documents by lamplight. She knocked on the doorframe, and he looked up, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I keep thinking about what Marcus said. That I'm a liability, that I'm in the way." Isabella stepped into the room. "He's not going to stop coming after me, is he? Even if we expose him, even if we destroy his credibility, he'll find a way to hurt me." Dominic was quiet for a moment, then stood and moved to the window. "Marcus Vitali is a particular kind of coward. He only attacks when he thinks he has the advantage. Right now, he's realizing he doesn't. The rumors he's spreading are desperation, not strategy. And when desperate men become dangerous men, then they learn what happens when they threaten something I've claimed to protect." Dominic turned to face her, and in his eyes, Isabella saw the reputation that preceded him. The man who'd built an empire through intelligence and calculated violence. "Your stepbrother is already dead, Isabella. He just doesn't know it yet. Whether he ends up in prison or in the ground depends entirely on how much further he pushes." The words should have frightened her. Instead, Isabella felt something close to relief. For 3 months, she'd been alone, powerless, fighting a battle she couldn't win. Now she had allies, resources, and a man whose word carried more weight than any law. "Thursday," she said. "We get the evidence, and we end this." Dominic nodded. "Thursday." The notebook lay open on Dominic's desk like an autopsy report, its pages illuminated by the amber glow of his desk lamp. 2 in the morning, and the city below had quieted to a hum. Isabella sat across from Dominic, both of them hunched over her father's final months of observations, searching for the truth hidden in plain sight. "Here," Isabella said, pointing to an entry from 4 months before Antonio's death. "MV arranged private sale of the Degas bronze. Told me buyer was anonymous collector from Singapore. Checked with our usual intermediaries. No such sale exists in their records." Dominic made a note on his tablet. "So Marcus sold it privately and kept the money. How much would a piece like that bring?" 400,000, minimum. Maybe more if the buyer was desperate. Isabella flipped forward several pages. And here, 3 weeks later. Father writes about finding discrepancies in the insurance documentation. Pieces listed as damaged that show no signs of restoration work. Insurance fraud. Dominic's voice was cold. File false claims, collect the payout, keep the artwork intact and sell it later. Double the profit. They worked in silence for another hour, cross-referencing Antonio's observations with the financial records Maria had compiled. A pattern emerged, clear and damning. Marcus had been systematically looting the gallery for years, growing bolder as Antonio's attention was consumed by running the business and caring for a collection that had become his life's work. Then Isabella found the entry that changed everything. Dominic. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Look at this. It's dated 2 days before he died. Dominic moved around the desk to read over her shoulder, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Antonio's handwriting was more hurried here, less controlled. Confronted MV today about the missing funds. He denied everything, became aggressive. Threatened me. Said if I pursued this, he'd make sure I regretted it. I don't recognize the boy I tried to raise. Meeting with Dominic Cross tomorrow. Need his help to do this quietly, to protect Isabella from the fallout. Marcus knows about the meeting. Saw him on his phone immediately after. Looked scared. Good. He should be. Isabella's hands trembled. He threatened my father. The day before the accident. Keep reading, Dominic said quietly. The final entry was written the morning of Antonio's death, brief and rushed. Marcus left early. Heard him tell Constance he had business in Connecticut. But his car is still in the garage. Where did he go? Why lie about it? Getting paranoid in my old age, or is something wrong? Meeting Dominic at 3 p.m. We'll discuss everything then. I need to protect my daughter. Need to make sure Isabella is safe if something happens to. The sentence ended mid-word, incomplete. Antonio had never finished it. 6 hours later, his car had gone off the road. Isabella felt something break inside her chest, the last fragile hope that her father's death had been an accident. He knew. He knew Marcus was dangerous, and he was trying to protect me, and Marcus found out about the meeting. Dominic's voice was granite. Luca, get in here. His second-in-command appeared in the doorway within seconds, alert despite the hour. Boss? I need everything on Marcus Vitali's movements the day Antonio Romano died. Phone records, credit card transactions, traffic cameras. Everything. And I want to know who he called in the hour after Antonio confronted him. Luca nodded and disappeared. Isabella stared at the incomplete sentence, her father's handwriting trailing off into nothing. He was murdered. Marcus killed him to keep him quiet, to protect his embezzlement, her voice broke. I knew. I knew it wasn't an accident, but everyone said I was being paranoid, that grief was making me irrational. Dominic's hand settled on her shoulder, the touch grounding. You weren't paranoid. You were right. And now we prove it. How? The police ruled it an accident. The case is closed. Even if we show them this notebook, it's just suspicions. No concrete evidence that Marcus tampered with the car. Then we find the evidence. Or we create circumstances where Marcus confesses. Dominic moved back around the desk, his mind clearly working through scenarios. Your father documented everything. Every discrepancy, every theft, every threat. This notebook is a roadmap to destroying Marcus legally. But if we're going after him for murder, we need to be absolutely certain. I am certain. Isabella stood, rage replacing grief in her bloodstream like a transfusion. Marcus killed my father. He stole his legacy. He tried to sell me off like property to cover his crimes. I want him to pay for all of it. He will. Dominic's voice carried the weight of absolute promise. But we do this smart. We gather every piece of evidence, we build a case that's unbreakable, and then we take him apart piece by piece. Financial crimes first, establish the motive. Then we go after him for murder. Isabella looked down at the notebook, at her father's careful documentation, at the final unfinished sentence that would haunt her forever. Antonio Romano had been a careful man, methodical and thorough. He'd left breadcrumbs for someone to follow, clues hidden in observations that seemed mundane until you understood what you were looking for. He'd known he was in danger. He'd documented everything. And he'd trusted Dominic Cross to protect his daughter if something happened to him. Thursday, Isabella said, her voice steady now, cold with purpose. We get into the gallery, we get the physical evidence, and we start building the case. Thursday, Dominic agreed. And Isabella? Your father would be proud of you. The woman you're becoming, the fight you're bringing. He'd be proud. The words broke something loose in her chest, and for the first time since the funeral, Isabella let herself cry. Not for long, not with weakness, but with the cleansing rage of someone who'd finally found purpose in their grief. Marcus Vitali had taken her father. Now she was going to take everything from him. The conference room at Blackwell and Associates occupied the 20th floor of a building in the financial district, all mahogany paneling and leather chairs that smelled like old money and older power. James Blackwell, her father's original attorney, sat at the head of the table with 2 associates flanking him. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, his expression smug, accompanied by his own lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Pike who looked like he billed by the minute. Isabella sat across from them, wearing a charcoal suit Sophia had helped her select. Professional, severe, unbreakable. Dominic stood behind her, not sitting, his presence a silent declaration that she didn't come alone or unprotected. This is highly irregular, Pike said immediately, glancing at Dominic with barely concealed nervousness. My client was told this was a routine estate matter. Your client was told there were questions about his management of the Romano Gallery, Blackwell replied, his tone neutral. Miss Romano has brought forward concerns that require immediate attention. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the picture of entitled confidence. Isabella, sweetheart, if you have concerns about how I've been running father's business, we could have discussed this privately. There's no need to involve attorneys, Anne. His eyes flicked to Dominic, whatever he is to you. Protection, Dominic said quietly. Among other things. Isabella opened the portfolio in front of her, hands steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. Mr. Blackwell, I'd like to submit evidence of financial misconduct spanning 4 years. Embezzlement totaling $3.2 million, insurance fraud, unauthorized sales of estate property, and falsified documentation. She slid the first document across the table. Maria Chen's forensic analysis, 40 pages of damning evidence presented in charts and spreadsheets that even a child could understand. Pike grabbed it, scanning rapidly. His expression shifted from dismissive to concerned to alarmed in the space of 30 seconds. This is circumstantial, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its smugness. Accounting errors, misunderstandings. This is systematic theft. Isabella's voice cut through his excuses like a blade. You created shell corporations to funnel money from the gallery. You sold pieces father specifically designated as permanent collection and pocketed the profits. You filed false insurance claims and kept the payouts. She slid another document across the table. Here are the original acquisition records from father's safe, showing the actual prices paid for artwork. Compare them to the records you submitted to the estate accountant. The numbers don't match. You broke into the gallery? Marcus's face flushed red. That's a legal entry, theft of property. The gallery is estate property, Blackwell interrupted. Miss Romano is a beneficiary and had every right to access those documents. You, however, as guardian, had a fiduciary duty to manage the estate honestly. These records suggest you violated that duty repeatedly. Isabella reached for the final piece of evidence, the one that would end this. Her father's notebook, its leather cover worn from her handling it every night for the past week. And this, she said, opening it to the marked pages, is my father's personal documentation of your crimes. Every discrepancy he noticed. Every question he asked that you couldn't answer. Including this entry from 2 days before his death. She read it aloud, her voice steady. Confronted MV today about the missing funds. He denied everything, became aggressive. Threatened me. Said if I pursued this, he'd make sure I regretted it. The room went silent. Marcus's face drained of color. That's not, he was confused, he didn't understand. He understood perfectly. Isabella closed the notebook. He was planning to expose you. He scheduled a meeting with Dominic Cross to discuss how to handle it quietly. You found out about that meeting. And the next day, his car went off the road. You're accusing me of murder? Marcus shot to his feet. This is insane. She's clearly unstable, gentlemen. Grief has made her paranoid. I move that we sit down. Dominic's voice wasn't loud, but Marcus dropped into his chair like his strings had been cut. You're going to listen to every word she says, and you're going to keep your mouth shut until she's finished. Isabella met Marcus's eyes across the table, saw the fear there, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Mr. Blackwell, I'm formally requesting that Marcus Vitali be removed as guardian of my father's estate. I'm also requesting that you refer this evidence to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Isabella, please. Marcus's voice took on a pleading tone. We're family. Father would have wanted. Father wanted me protected from you. Isabella stood, placing both hands on the table. He documented everything because he knew. He knew you'd come after me once he was gone. He left breadcrumbs for someone to follow, and I followed them. And now everyone in this room knows exactly what you are. Pike was already gathering his papers, the instinct of a lawyer recognizing a sinking ship. My client and I need to confer. Your client can confer from a jail cell, Dominic said. The evidence goes to the DA today. If Marcus Vitali is still in this city by tonight, he'll regret it. If he ever goes near Isabella Romano again, they'll never find his body. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Blackwell cleared his throat. Miss Romano, on behalf of your father's estate, I apologize for not investigating sooner. The evidence you've presented is more than sufficient to remove Mr. Vitali as guardian. I'll file the emergency petition this afternoon. Marcus stared at Isabella, his expression transforming from fear to pure hatred. You think you've won? You think having your criminal boyfriend threaten me changes anything? I'll destroy you. You'll do nothing. Isabella's voice was ice. Because you have nothing left. No access to my father's money. No authority over his gallery. No power over me. You're finished, Marcus. The only question now is whether you leave quietly or whether Dominic makes you leave in pieces. She picked up her portfolio, turned, and walked toward the door. Dominic followed, his hands settling briefly on the small of her back, a gesture of support and possession that made Marcus's jaw clench with impotent rage. At the threshold, Isabella looked back one final time. Goodbye, Marcus. I hope prison is everything you deserve. 3 weeks after the meeting with Blackwell, Isabella stood in her father's gallery for the first time as its sole owner. The courts had moved with unusual speed, perhaps influenced by Dominic's quiet pressure on the right people, perhaps simply because the evidence was so overwhelming. Marcus had been arrested, charged with embezzlement and fraud. The murder investigation was ongoing, but Maria Chen's forensic analysis of the car's maintenance records had revealed suspicious irregularities in the brake system. Justice was coming, slow but inevitable. Isabella ran her hand along a gilded frame housing a Caravaggio sketch, feeling her father's presence in every corner of this space he'd built. The gallery was hers now. The collection, the legacy, everything Antonio Romano had worked 30 years to create. And tonight, Dominic was taking her to dinner. The restaurant was the kind of place where reservations required 6 months' notice unless your last name was Cross. They sat in a private corner, crystal and candlelight creating an intimate cocoon separate from the other diners. Dominic wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a used car, and Isabella had chosen a navy dress that Sophia assured her was perfect, though for what, she hadn't specified. You've been avoiding me, Dominic said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. The past week, you've barely left the gallery. I've been working. There's a lot to rebuild, exhibitions to plan, donors to reassure that the gallery is in stable hands. Isabella took a sip of wine. And I haven't been avoiding you. I've been finding myself. Have you? His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. Found yourself? I'm starting to. She set down her glass. For 3 months after father died, I was a ghost. Then you claimed me, protected me, helped me destroy Marcus. You gave me back my life, Dominic. But I'm realizing it was never actually gone. I just forgot how to fight for it. Dominic was quiet for a moment, and something shifted in his expression. I have a proposition for you. Isabella's stomach tightened. I'm listening. Marry me. The words were said simply, without fanfare, as if he were proposing a business merger rather than a lifetime commitment. You need protection from the enemies Marcus made, the people he borrowed money from who now expect payment. You need legitimacy in a world that still questions why you're living in my penthouse. And he paused, I need someone who sees me as more than a reputation. Someone who isn't afraid to challenge me. It should have sounded romantic. It was practical, strategic, and completely logical. Which was exactly the problem. You're offering me a different cage, Isabella said quietly. A gilded one, certainly. Better than what Marcus offered with Vincent Caruso. But still a cage. I'm offering you partnership. Protection. A future where you don't have to fight every battle alone. But whose future? Yours or mine? Isabella leaned forward. Dominic, you saved my life. You helped me reclaim everything Marcus stole. I will be grateful to you for that until the day I die. But gratitude isn't love, and protection isn't freedom. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What are you saying? I'm saying I can't go from being Marcus's prisoner to being your wife. I need time to figure out who Isabella Romano is when she's not defined by the men around her. My father, Marcus, you, all of you shaped my life in different ways. But I've never had the chance to shape it myself. You think I would control you the way Marcus did? No. Isabella reached across the table, her hand covering his. I think you would protect me so completely that I'd never learn to protect myself. I think you would solve my problems so efficiently that I'd never figure out how to solve them alone. And I think I would fall into the comfortable habit of letting you, because it's easier than standing on my own. Dominic stared at their joined hands, his expression unreadable. How long? What? How much time do you need? Isabella felt something crack open in her chest, relief and sadness tangled together. A year. Maybe more. I need to run the gallery, rebuild the collection, prove to myself that I can stand without someone holding me up. I need to become the woman my father believed I could be. And if I can't wait a year? Then you were never offering me partnership. You were offering me another form of ownership. Isabella squeezed his hand. I care about you, Dominic. More than I probably should, given who you are and what you do. But I won't trade one guardian for another. I won't go from being Marcus's pawn to being your queen. Even if being my queen means having everything you want. Especially then. Isabella withdrew her hand. Because I need to know I can have everything I want on my own terms first. Otherwise, I'll always wonder if I earned it or if it was just given to me. Dominic sat back in his chair, his expression shifting through emotions too quickly for her to read. Anger, perhaps. Or respect. Possibly both. You're refusing me, he said finally, a statement rather than a question. I'm asking you to wait. To give me space to grow into someone worthy of standing beside you rather than behind you. Isabella's voice was steady despite the fear that he would refuse, that he would walk away and leave her truly alone. I'm asking you to trust that what we could build in a year will be stronger than what we could force now. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and loss. Then Dominic smiled, and it was real, reaching his eyes in a way she'd only seen a few times before. A year, he said. On one condition. You let me take you to dinner once a month. No protection, no business, just two people getting to know each other without the weight of debt and obligation. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unbidden. I can agree to that. Then go, Dominic said softly. Build your gallery. Become whoever you're meant to be. I'll be here when you're ready. And if I'm never ready? Then I'll have spent a year having dinner with an extraordinary woman once a month. That's hardly a tragedy. Isabella stood, leaned across the table, and kissed him gently. Thank you for understanding. Thank you, Dominic replied, for teaching me that some things are worth waiting for. 6 months later, the Romano Gallery reopened with an exhibition that had the art world buzzing. Reclaimed, art, legacy, and Truth featured not just the recovered pieces from her father's collection, but new acquisitions Isabella had personally curated. Young artists whose work challenged conventions, spoke truth to power, captured beauty in unexpected places. The kind of exhibition Antonio Romano would have loved. Isabella stood in the center of the main gallery, watching critics and collectors move through the space with expressions ranging from thoughtful to awestruck. She wore a crimson dress that Sophia had called absolutely lethal, her dark hair swept up to reveal the pearl earrings her father had given her for her 21st birthday. She looked nothing like the ghost who'd hidden in storage rooms 6 months ago. She'd rebuilt everything. The gallery's reputation, her father's legacy, her own identity. She'd hired a new staff, implemented transparent accounting practices, established partnerships with museums and universities. The Romano Gallery wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. And she'd done it alone. Well, not entirely alone. Sophia had become a genuine friend, offering advice and connections without expectation. Luca checked in weekly, his protective instincts never quite dormant. And Dominic kept his promise, one dinner per month, no business discussed, just conversations that ranged from art history to philosophy to the peculiar loneliness of power. She hadn't seen him in 3 weeks, though. He'd been in Chicago handling some crisis she didn't ask about and he didn't volunteer. She told herself the ache of his absence was normal, that she'd simply grown accustomed to their monthly dinners, that it meant nothing significant. She was lying to herself, and she knew it. Quite a transformation. The voice behind her was familiar as her own heartbeat. Isabella turned to find Dominic standing 3 feet away, wearing a black suit that made him look like elegant danger personified. He was studying not her, but the paintings on the walls, the way the exhibition flowed, the careful curation that told a story about loss and reclamation. "You came," she said, hating how breathless she sounded. "Did you think I wouldn't?" His eyes met hers finally, and she saw pride there. Genuine admiration. "I've been watching what you've built, Isabella. From a distance, respecting your space. But tonight is your night, and I wanted to see it in person. What do you think?" "I think your father would be proud beyond words." Dominic moved closer, his presence commanding attention even in a room full of powerful people. "I think you've become exactly who you were always meant to be. And I think," he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his expression, "I think I've never wanted anything more than I want to be part of what you're building." Isabella's breath caught. "Dominic. Let me finish." He reached out, his hand tilting her chin up with that same gentle command he'd used 6 months ago at the gala. But this time, there was a question in his touch, not a claim. "I told you I'd wait a year. I've waited 6 months, and I'll wait another 6 if that's what you need. But I need you to know something. When I asked you to marry me, I got it wrong. I offered you protection when what you needed was partnership. I offered you security when what you deserved was freedom to choose. And now?" Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. "Now I'm not offering you anything." Dominic's thumb brushed her jaw, the gesture achingly familiar. "I'm asking. Who do you belong to, Isabella Romano?" The question hung between them, the same words that had changed everything 6 months ago. But the context was different now. The power dynamics had shifted. She wasn't a woman being saved. She was a woman who'd saved herself. "To myself," Isabella said, her voice clear and certain. "I belong to myself, Dominic. I always will." Something that might have been disappointment flickered in his eyes. "But," she continued, reaching up to cover his hand with hers, "I choose to stand with you. Not behind you, not owned by you, but beside you. Equal partners in whatever this becomes." Dominic's expression transformed, and Isabella saw something she'd never expected from the man who controlled half the city. Relief. Pure, unguarded relief. "Equal partners," he repeated, as if testing the words. "You understand what that means? My world is dangerous, Isabella. My enemies won't hesitate to use you against me. The life I lead is your life, not mine. I'm not asking you to change who you are, Dominic. I'm asking you to accept who I am. A woman who runs her own gallery, makes her own choices, and yes, chooses to love a man whose reputation should terrify her but somehow doesn't. You love me." Not a question, but a revelation. Against all logic and self-preservation, apparently yes. Isabella smiled. Though I reserve the right to change my mind if you ever try to protect me from something I'm perfectly capable of handling myself. Dominic laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Noted. And for the record, Miss Romano, I love you too. The woman who refused my proposal because she needed to find herself first. The woman who faced down her demons and won. The woman who's standing here tonight, having built something extraordinary from the ashes of loss. He kissed her then, in front of critics and collectors, society photographers and art world elites. A claim, yes, but one she made equally. A partnership forged not from desperation or debt, but from genuine choice. When they broke apart, Isabella was smiling. So what happens now? Now, Dominic said, his hand finding hers and holding it like a promise, we build something together. Your world and mine, finding the places they intersect. No cages, gilded or otherwise. Just two people choosing each other, every day. I can agree to that. Good. Dominic pulled her closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. Because I've waited 6 months to kiss you again, and I plan to make up for lost time. Then take me home, Isabella said. Both of us. Together. As equals. And as they walked through the gallery she'd rebuilt from ruins, past the art her father had loved, toward a future neither of them could have predicted 6 months ago, Isabella Romano finally understood what freedom truly meant. It wasn't the absence of connection. It was the power to choose who you connected with, on your own terms, as your own person. She'd found herself. And in doing so, she'd found him. Not bad for a woman who'd once been nothing more than a ghost in her own life.